Tonight's a bite-sized class. We'll first start off with a vert. This week's parsha, which not only starts off a new parsha, but it's a new chumash, also starts off Eila hadvarim ashatiber Moshe el kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all the Jews, meaning to say that chumash dvarim is Moshe speaking, Moses speaking to the Jewish people, and in fact, there's a difference in how it's written, how the Chumash Devarim is written as opposed to the first four books. The first four books is sort of written in the third person. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, meaning God spoke to Moses, meaning it's written in the third person. And Chumash Devarim is for the most part written in that Moshe himself is speaking. And the sages say that, in fact, the revelation was different. That Moshe, Dvarim was, so to speak, Moshe's words speaking to the Jewish people, and the first four books was different. And the question is why? Why the need for this difference between how the first four books are in the third person, sort of higher than Moshe, and the fourth book is Shechina Medaberes B'Techgreni Shel Moshe. Says the Shekhinah is speaking through Moshe, but it's Moshe speaking. And in short, the Rebbe explains that the concept of Torah, we know Torah is a godly wisdom, is divine wisdom. So in a sense, Torah is really higher than what we finite beings can grasp. But God gave the Torah down here onto this world. And as the pasuk says, the Torah is not in heavens. Now it's down here on earth. And we're supposed to understand the Torah. Not only that, the halach is based on our understanding, obviously based on the specific rules, but it's our understanding. Meaning the purpose of Torah is to fuse the divine wisdom with human beings, created beings. Now, if we would just have how the Torah is in the first four books, that's sort of representing how the Torah is in heaven, only divine wisdom. Therefore, we have the book of Devarim, which is sort of in the middle, and that sort of gives us the ability to grasp the Torah also with our own intellect, just like Moshe is, so to speak, speaking how the Torah is coming down into his own intellect, and through that he's giving it to us. So we're also grasping how the divine wisdom is connected to the intellect of Moshe, who Moshe is a human being. He may be a very holy being, and Ish Elokim, a godly being, but nevertheless he was also a human being. And through Moshe giving us the Torah, how it was already by him fused both the godly, infinite wisdom with the finite, so too we have the ability to grasp the Torah and understand it and make it, fuse it into our own intellect, the godly intellect. That was the vert. Why we need the Torah to be, why Dvarim has to be given in that way. Going to Tanya, so we explained in last week, we explained that there's the Beinoni, there's the average person, the middle person. He's someone who's in constant battle. There's the godly soul, and then there's the animal soul, and they're doing constant battle. Who's going to rule over the person? But we did say that the Beinoni is someone that never actually sinned. The desires, the thoughts that to do something bad, he never actually fulfills. When it comes to thoughts, there's two types of thoughts that a person has. There's thoughts that come unbidden to the person's mind, right? Just pops into your head, you're in the middle of walking, or in the middle of davening, as some people have, right? And the thoughts just come up. That's something that even the Beinoni would have. He's not a tzaddik. He has these thoughts. He hasn't conquered the bad. He has these thoughts. He has these desires that just pop up in the middle of nowhere. That's not what the Beinoni is conquered. What the Beinoni does do, however, he doesn't take these thoughts and actively think about it. He doesn't take these thoughts and bring them to fruition, even in thought. Meaning he doesn't sin in thought, speech, or action. So he doesn't take these unwanted, not godly thoughts about who knows what. He doesn't actively think about it. How is he able to do that if we said he's in constant battle? In other words, just like the bad, the negative may not rule over him, but the good, the positive, the godly soul also doesn't rule over him. How does he have the power not to actively think about it? So for this, the Tanya brings a new idea that the moyach shalit al halev, that the mind rules over the heart, bitoldasei, by the person's a natural born ability that person has, that the mind can rule over the heart. And it's because this natural thing, it's not something that comes out of the godly soul being in control. It's the mind naturally can rule over the heart. Therefore, the Beinoni also has the ability to, although the heart may have come up with some desire all of a sudden, sending it to the mind, but a person has the ability to conquer it and not actively think about it. Obviously, the best way to do that is to start thinking about something else, and you should always have something else to think about. And that's why it's important to have some Torah thoughts or Torah memorized by heart, in order that you right away can think about something else. And there's actually a story about this, about the mind ruling over the heart. The story is told that during when Napoleon was trying to conquer Russia, so while there were many rabbis who were actually for Napoleon to win, they thought it would be better for the Jews physically, materially. The Alter Rebbe was actually pushing for Napoleon to lose and the Russians to win, not because he thought it would be better physically for the Jews, but he felt that Napoleon would be a disaster spiritually for the Jews. And there's many stories about it. But to the point that he actually sent one of his chassidim who knew French to be a spy, to spy on Napoleon. And the story goes that Napoleon actually meets him, and they're discussing plans, and Napoleon suspected him. He suspected there's a spy. So Napoleon right away screams, "You're a spy!" And he puts his hand on this chassid, Moshe Maizlish's heart, to see if he would beat faster and would he be scared. And that's how he would be able to tell whether it's true or not, meaning the old-fashioned lie detector. And Moshe Maizlish says, was one of the great chassidim, because it was moyach shalit al halev, his mind was so in control that he was able to keep calm, that even his heart shouldn't be beating extra. So this is something that we should know, that although we may not have the power that we shouldn't have these unbidden thoughts. Even a Beinoni has these unbidden thoughts, but we do have the power not to actively think about these unbidden thoughts. That's something that we do have, and we have to try to, even if maybe one time we succumb, but try again to overcome these unbidden thoughts. Going to the halacha, we know that during especially the 9 days, the Rebbe pushed that there should be a siyum. People should make a siyum, finishing a tractate in Talmud or something, to add joy in a positive way in the 9 days, even if you wouldn't be eating meat. Now the question is, what can you make a siyum on? Can you make a siyum on Tanakh? The halacha is that you can make a siyum on any substantial thing that you learned, including Tanakh. Let's say you learned Sefer Yeshua or Shoftim, the book of Joshua or Judges. You learned it. If you learned it properly, you have to learn it properly, meaning with one of the classical commentaries, let's say Rashi or someone else. But if you actually learned it and you put in an effort to it, then you can indeed make a siyum on it. It would be considered a siyum, and for those who eat meat after the siyum, it would be permitted. However, there is one key difference between making a siyum on a Sefer in Tanakh, or Chumash for that matter. If you finish learning a Chumash properly, we'll be able to make a siyum on that as well. There is a difference between that and finishing a tractate in Talmud, for example. Kaddish. We know when we finish learning something, we say Kaddish. And when somebody makes a siyum, they say Kaddish. They say Kaddish Derabanan. This Kaddish is only said on something that was from the oral Torah that was learned. In fact, according to some explanation, that's why it's called Kaddish de Rabbanon, because it's only said on something that the Rabbanon, meaning the sages, taught, meaning the oral Torah. Therefore, if you make a siyum on Tanakh, Torah Shebeksav, you would not necessarily make a Kaddish, say Kaddish afterwards. However, there is one added thing. Not only do we say Kaddish only something from the oral Torah, the custom is also that we only say something from Kaddish after something that's from Agada, meaning something that was expanding, an oral Torah expounding verses from the written Torah, which is why even after we learn something from the oral Torah, we end off the custom is we say Rabbi Hanani ben Akasha Aimer, in other words, that which is a Mishnah, but it's a Mishnah, it's a Gadic Mishnah, expounding on a verse, because we only say Kaddish on something that was from Agada. So in theory, even after you made the siyum on the Torah Shebeksav, on the written Torah, which you would not say Kaddish over, you can add this verse that we say it after Pirkei Avos. That's the reason, right after every Perik of Pirkei Avos, we say it after Kaddish, after we finish davening. We also say this, Rabbi Chanan ben Akasha Eimer, because we want to finish with a Agadic teaching, and on that we say this Kaddish Rabbanon, because really Kaddish Rabbanon was made more instituted for something that we're learning for everybody, which is more Agada. And therefore you can say it, if you say Rabbi Chanan ben Akasha, you can say Kaddish after also making a siyum on Torah Shebeksav. So to recap, first we explained why Chumash Devarim is written not in the third person as the first four Chumashim are, but rather it's Moshe talking to the Jews. And we said there was a reason for this, there was a need for it. Not just because Moshe is actually talking to the Jews, but the need for it was that Torah essentially transcends the human intellect. But the purpose of the Torah was that people should be able to understand it. In fact, halach is based on the understanding. Therefore, there had to be the Torah, how the Torah is fused, the divine intellect, the infinite wisdom, is fused with the human intellect. And therefore, Chumash Devarim, that's what it is. It's the divine intellect fused with Moshe. And Moshe is giving that over. Once we have that, so then we have the power of the rest of Torah to understand the Torah and make the Torah not just that it's the divine wisdom, but it's how the divine wisdom comes down into our understanding. And when we learn Torah, we're fusing the human intellect, our human intellect, our finite intellect, with the infinite intellect, the godly wisdom. Then we said from Tanya, we said that the Beinoni, we had explained that he's in constant battle, but we said he doesn't even bring his desires, even the thoughts of desire, into thought. Meaning he doesn't sin in thought, speech, or action. But we said, how could that be if both his godly soul and his animal soul, none of them rule over the body, the constant fight. So how does, even in his thought? So we explained there's two thoughts. There's the thought that comes unbidden to the person, middle of davening, let's say. You start thinking about something, which we'll get to a bit. Or during the day, you have thoughts about doing, maybe doing a sin, maybe a desire, fulfilling a desire. And then there's taking that thought and actively thinking about it. Having the thought come unbidden, he's a Beinoni, he's not a tzaddik, he still has these thoughts. However, to actively think about it, he does have the power to overcome it, since we said that a person naturally has moyach shal ta'alev. His intellect naturally rules over his desires, over his emotion, and he can naturally do that. This is a natural thing that a person has, and therefore he can overcome these thoughts, these desires, thoughts of doing whatever it is. And then we had this story to illustrate from Ramesh Majlis. And the Alter Rebbe, who he sent Ramesh Majlis to spy on Napoleon. And then we brought the halacha that you can make a siyum not just on Gemara or Mishnayos, you can make it even on one of the books of the Tanakh, including the Chumash, but you have to have learned it, put in the effort to it. But we did say that on Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, you don't say Kaddish after learning it. You only say Kaddish after learning something Torah Shebal Peh. Plus another added halacha in general about Kaddish, that we only say Kaddish after an Agada, after you learn something that's expounding on a verse. Not just the halacha, but the custom is also an Agada, which is why whenever we're learning halachas, for example, after davening, the mourner, our custom is that he says Kaddish after Mishnayos, but those are laws. It's Mishnayos, it's laws about the mikvah. It's not Agada. It's not expounding specifically on a verse, which is why he always adds on Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha, which is really a different Mishnayos, but he's adding it onto there to Mishnayos Mikvahs, which is the standard Mishnayos that he makes after davening, because the custom is to only say Kaddish the Rabbanon on Agada. That's it for tonight. As we said, the purpose of the scene was to add simcha, to transform these days into a positive day in any way that we can. May they be transformed in the literal sense to days of joy with the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Have a good night.